Hey guys, today we're gonna be making homemade beef jerky, one of my all-time favorite snacks when camping and something humans have been eating for thousands of years. So if you watch my videos, you're gonna see that normally I bring my own beef jerky, right? That's something I like to do for a few different reasons. One, it's fun to do. Two, you know what goes in it. Doesn't have to be loaded with sugar and all that other stuff. Number three, it's a lot more cost effective to make your own beef jerky than to just buy it 3.5 ounces at a time at the store. So the meat we're gonna be using today is round eye, or beef round. This is something I got at Costco. It costs $3.49 a pound. So this 5-pound package costs us just under $18. Now the reason I like to use top round is it's a lean meat to begin with. The grain is really well defined so that when we cut it, it's gonna make a nice jerky. And it's also very inexpensive, as you can see, $3.49 a pound.
When it comes to cutting this meat, when it comes to actually slicing that top round up, there's a couple different options we have. If you have a meat slicer and it's available for you, this is the easiest and most convenient way to go. If you don't have a meat slicer, you can just cut it by hand. We have a knife here, I've got a cutting board, and we'll go through and cut some of this by hand as well so you can see how you can do it if all you have is a knife.
Now we're gonna get into the seasonings and how to flavor the beef jerky. This is gonna be kind of a Cajun-based recipe. There's a bunch of different recipes we could do, but this one's really a crowd favorite. It seems to be the one that everyone likes the most. And the idea for this jerky originally came from my buddy Greg, so shout out to Greg. We're gonna need 4 cups of water. Now we're ready to add all of our seasonings in before we cut the meat. We have our 4 cups of water here in this bucket. And this is not a bucket, this is kind of like a Tupperware container. But I'm gonna do dry ingredients first. And the very first thing we're gonna do is some Tony C's, some Tony Chachere's. Any Cajun seasoning can do. This is just the one that I use. And it's gonna be heavy on this, guys. Probably half a cup of Cajun seasoning total. And when it comes to flavoring beef jerky, remember, you wanna go strong rather than light. You want it to be overpowering because you're just gonna have this meat in there marinating for a little bit of time, and you need it to be strong if it's gonna make its way into the meat and then you're gonna taste it later. Some black pepper. Next thing's gonna be some meat tenderizer. This is, well, I was gonna say Adolph's meat tenderizer, but it's not, it's just Kroger brand. We're gonna do 2 tablespoons of meat tenderizer. This recipe that you're seeing is for 5 pounds of meat. So all of the ingredients you're seeing me put in here is gonna be for 5 pounds of seasoning, or to season 5 pounds of meat. Paprika, you want 1 tablespoon. Cure salt. This is optional because we're doing full muscle jerky out of roast. If you were doing a ground jerky or sausages, you would want to use this. This is something for safety, but it's also controversial. This is gonna be your preservatives. It's nitrates and nitrites, I think it is, but it's also known as the pink salt. So we're gonna use half of a teaspoon, a tiny little bit of this pink salt cure. It's gonna make sure that any bacteria in here gets dealt with, that it's safe to eat, but also it's gonna give the meat a red flavor. It doesn't give it a red flavor. Also, it's gonna give the meat a red color. That's literally all we're throwing in. Just a tiny, tiny bit. Now there's not a whole lot of need for salt because we've already put in tenderizer and the cure salt, although a tiny bit of cure salt. What I am gonna do is just add a small amount of table salt for flavor. So this is all of our dry ingredients. We've got them all in here now. I'm gonna go ahead and whisk it up a little bit, mix these in. And now I'm gonna add a few wet ingredients. First is gonna be some Worcestershire. This is really to taste. I'd say that's about a 1/4 cup. This one's important. I didn't use liquid smoke when I first started making beef jerky. We're gonna be dehydrating the jerky today. Liquid smoke, real important component. About a tablespoon. Or a healthy squirt. All right, guys, that is everything. So we've got our dry ingredients, wet ingredients. We're gonna go ahead and mix this up. And now we're ready to go. We can cut the meat, get it marinating. Before we start slicing this meat up, we want to do a little bit of prep. And I stuck this in the freezer overnight, froze it solid, then I pulled it out, put it in the fridge for a little while so it could defrost slightly. It's firm, still hard in the middle, but not completely frozen through. The reason we're doing that is it's gonna make it easier to slice consistently here in a second. Trim off any of this excess fat that we see. Being real careful with the knife, of course. Perfect. All right, so this is pretty much now trimmed, ready to go. We can slice it. So if you do not have a meat slicer, you can do this by hand, guys. And you, like I said, need to be very careful, do at your own risk. But with a nice sharp knife, if you lay it against the steak flat, you can cut in and really find kind of the width that you're looking for. Then what I like to do is get my hand out of the way by holding that flap of meat and then just continuing to cut. Continuing to cut as so. Now what's cool about this is you get pieces that aren't uniform. Everything's cut by hand, so they're all gonna be a little bit different. Let's go ahead and bring our marinade and start throwing them in there. You can just continue to start that cut. Pull it through. Now I'm sure there's better methods of doing this, but this works really well. It's something I've done time and time again. When you're slicing meat for jerky, there's really two schools of thought here. And if you look in the meat, here, let me get it a little closer, but you can see the grain running this way. See right here? And everything's running this way. The grain of the meat is running this way. You can cut with the grain, which is how I'm gonna do this. You can also cut cross sections or against the grain, which is a different style of jerky. It comes out completely different because the fat is layered in there differently. Personally, I like to cut with the grain. I feel like the jerky holds together better, and it's also a better texture at the end when you're gonna eat. So a meat slicer like this is a huge advantage. Like I said, you can really customize how thick or thin you want your beef jerky. You've got to be careful. Again, use all the safety protocols at your own risk. However, by freezing the meat slightly, it's going to be a little more firm, and we can run it through this very easily. So a meat slicer like this, huge advantage. You can really customize exactly how you want this meat to be sliced as far as size. And as you can see, very consistently and very quickly, just pound this out. All that meat is now sliced. I've got it all mixed up in here really well with the marinade. And what we want to do now is cover it. And I'm going to put it in the refrigerator for between really 1 hour minimum all the way up to 12. At least somewhere in that range. But after an hour, we can probably pull it out, throw it in the dehydrator. That meat has been marinating for 2 hours now. It's ready to dehydrate. And the way we're gonna dry this meat out is with our dehydrator, guys. Now, there are videos online that you can go to that show how to make beef jerky out of your oven, put it on the lowest setting, keep the door cracked. I've never done it. That's not what we're gonna do today. What we're gonna do though is take this meat, start layering it in the dehydrator, and really just trying to fit as much as we can per tray. Stacking these up until the entire dehydrator is full. Now, this particular model has a temperature gauge on the top, or a temperature setting on the top, I should say,
And when I make beef jerky, I'm gonna set that all the way to the top, to the highest setting, which I think is 185. So now that we have the meat dehydrating, we're just gonna let it sit. Every 2 hours, I'm gonna come rotate the trays, put the bottom ones up a little higher, take the top ones, put them on the bottom. After 6 hours, I'm gonna start checking for doneness. I don't want there to be any moisture, and if I bend the meat, I wanna see the white of those fibers, those meat fibers when I bend it.
And finished product, look at this. Now, you can see there's some of the fat coming up off this. You just want to blot with a paper towel any of that fat that you have, and that comes right off. But if you look here, finished product, like I said, when you bend it, you can see, ooh, that's gonna break. It's not even bendable, that's dry. And it's good. But if you look, guys, finished product, this is what you get. A lot more economical than if you were to buy it at the store. Now for storage, guys, typically I'm just gonna throw this in the Ziploc and it's gonna be gone so fast, there's no problem about it going bad. You could also vacuum seal it and freeze it if you needed to. But again, guys, thank you very much for watching the channel. Homemade beef jerky, one of the best snacks you can make. Thank you, guys.